Very serious episode here. Not as fun as the space episode we just came off, but this is a more serious. This has serious implications for. It goes to the core of transhumanism and the USTP, which is safety and ethics. Welcome, Kristen. You're a special guest here. You're an electrical engineer. I've got to know you. I really enjoy your work. I think you're a great person. I think you're you're a big thinker, and it's really good to have you here on the show. And Ben Zion, welcome back. We're counting down to find out who completes the campaign. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we're talking about the brain today. The brain is probably the most complex biological machine, if you want to call it like that. It's the most complex thing in the universe. So there's a lot of unknowns with the brain, especially when we're talking about consciousness, okay? Because consciousness is a big unknown, and that's why I'm such a big fan. Ira and myself are fans as well of this, but of the brain, the brain mega projects, the reverse brain engineering, and all these neurological projects that are coming down to understand what is the brain and what is consciousness. Now, Kristen, welcome to the show. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your history and your background and whatever you would like to say as an opener.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm an electrical engineer. I've been in engineering for about 15 years. And are you getting feedback?
A little bit of feedback.
Okay. Keep going or?
Keep going. You're all right.
Okay, I didn't know if it was something I could regulate on this end. So I've been in engineering for 15 years and got the opportunity to do a little bit in the medical field and learn about neuroscience and that kind of thing. So it's kind of nice to bridge gaps between engineering and medicine and the brain, with what I have. It's been fun.
That's great, electrical engineering. And how did you get inspired to do electrical engineering? What is it about electrical engineering that you resonated with?
Okay, well, I didn't know what an engineer was, and it just went down the phone book and randomly started calling engineers and got hired. I told the guy that hired me that I wanted to work for free as long as I could learn, and sure enough, like the next day, I was like, this is like a pretty cool job. I think I'll stay here forever, and that was destiny. Doesn't sound very well thought out, but that's the way it goes.
That's the way it goes, and it turns out you're a genius engineer at that. Ben Zion, welcome back to the show. Now, we've been in a campaign cycle, and we've been having a little bit of fun and this and that, but we do take safety seriously, right? Let's talk about some open up on some, because you like to talk about Neuralace, you like the Neuralink. Everybody knows in the USTP that there are safety concerns and safety considerations. Sometimes we might not voice those as much as we should, but they're definitely at the core. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I've tended to like to focus on the very fine prospects of brain-computer interfaces and related developments. But this convergence, this confluence of neuroscience and computer science, it holds a great many concerns that we need to be anticipating and considering, and I think that Kristen has a lot of insights there, and I'm very pleased that we're able to discuss this tonight.
All right, so let's kick this off, Kristen. What is a neuroweapon? So let's talk about neuroweapons. What is a neuroweapon? What's the definition or context of a neuroweapon? Thank you, Kristen.
Well, the idea is to be able to control the forces in the nerve cell, from the cell to the entire system, according to the designer of the weapon's desire, and to take away the functionality of the system from the design basis of the human body that it targets in.
All right, very cool.
But when it's weaponized, that would be the goal.
Yeah, and Kristen and I had a talk. You can check it out at the Futurist New Deal pages, where we talked quite a bit about this sonic weapon or energy weapon attack. It's somewhat uncertain, but this event in Cuba, you can see the links and information there as well. So we're already perhaps seeing weapons of this kind in use in some rudimentary form. And depending on the pace of technology, techno-futurists anticipate a quickening pace. We have to be prepared to consider these prospects becoming more commonplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, can you just expand on this definition of a neuroweapon? I mean, can you put it into layman's terms? I mean, it wants to influence the nervous system, right? I mean, if what's that all about? I mean, what's the end goal of a neuroweapon? If, you know, what else happens, Kristen?
Well, the idea of the opponent who's aiming this at you would be to have you perform according to their will. So it would be, you know, it's an invisible form of, it can be an invisible form of warfare and aggression towards someone. But the end goal would be the same as like a kinetic weapon, a more traditional, you would think a bomb or a gun, that kind of thing. But, you know, with the neuroweapons, it gives this incredible illusion of safety in society when the assault goes down. And, you know, the victims really don't have much to compare it to. You know, maybe engineers or scientists can speak about it properly, but if you get people like the diplomats in Cuba or China, you know, they'll first go to psychiatry or a place where this type of evaluation doesn't belong and get sucked down into their system, or go to more of a mainstream medical practice that doesn't have the proper knowledge to deal with it. You know, it's kind of like you have to get above mainstream medical care to be able to diagnose these assaults. So proper evaluations as to how many people have been hit with them, or what the current factors of safety are in society aren't exactly accurate with the knowledge that's out there. Just it's like a very esoteric type operation with these, you know, intelligence agencies and the people that own them. And you know, you mentioned, you know, I think my mind's being controlled or something of that matter, and I don't know how it's happening. You know, I can't control my arms or my thoughts or the audible sensations. And sure enough, everyone automatically says, oh, this must be tinnitus or schizophrenia, or they pull out the DSM and then they go through the statistics of what it could possibly be. And the DSM isn't based on evidence of success because there hasn't been any.
For the audience who haven't heard of the DSM, what is the DSM?
Diagnostic Statistics Manual. The S stands for statistic. So it's pretty revealing about the condition of the disorders in there. They're just based upon statistics and no evidence. It's theory based. You know, there's a lot of people making great efforts, but you know, for those who want to have a more data-driven approach to medicine and national security, that it's you know, it's good to know what that manual means and who uses it and how to avoid it if you can.
Fantastic. Oh, sorry, Ben.
Well, such a type of weaponry, it does. It's quite foreboding, but the people who might work on this sort of thing, they would view it as non-lethal weaponry generally. But this idea of it being used in such a way that it escapes notice by the person who's been incapacitated. This is an alarming prospect. It's something from a spy film or a horror film or all of the above.
Yeah, and Kristen, you know, you're putting some people on the show who can demonstrate, you know, some tactics. Who are they? Donato and Doug, right? Can you talk about those people as well?
Okay. Well, I have an associate who actually designed these weapons. His name is Robert Duncan. I've read a few publications about the history and the design process. We haven't compared personal notes on the topic, but I don't believe that while he was in the process of designing them, he knew exactly what they were for. I think that became a bit of a surprise at some point. And but yeah, he's got great knowledge. he is a Harvard grad. He worked with DARPA and the CIA and all, I guess, most of the mainstream levels of defense that you hear about in the media. Also, there's someone else that's also very accessible and has offered to give speeches about this and raise awareness just for the sake of human rights and security, national security. He is Dr. James Giordano, and he's a chief bioethicist at Georgetown University, and he also cared for the diplomats and did part of their evaluation. And he and I have committed to a couple conferences together, and we've done at least one's in the process now. I have his abstract, which I wanted to read at some point for that conference, just so I could reveal his thoughts, due to the fact that it's generally I have to have a lot of notice to be able to speak to him. So
can you please read that abstract if you want to? You can take the time now to read the abstract, and then I want to ask you. Don't let me forget. Then I want to ask you to explain to the audience about the diplomats, because this is something that people can dig into and research for themselves. But firstly, let's read that statement out, Mr. Giordano's statement. Thank you very much, Kristen.
The growth of neuroscience and technology has prompted growing interest in development of and concerns about the use of such technologies and tools in warfare, intelligence, and security operations. Many neuroscience and technology developments are poised for current or near future translation to investigational and operational levels, thereby moving from the research bench to the battlescape. Such neuroscience and technology includes various drugs and neurotechnologies for training and performance and optimization of intelligence and combat personnel. As well, uses also entail the development and engagement of agents such as drugs, microbes, and toxins, and devices as weapons, called neuroweapons, the topic we're on, to affect and modify thoughts, feelings, senses, actions, health, or in some case, incur lethal consequences. And this is the presentation that he tends to give. He's introducing himself as a neuroscientist and neuroethicist, internationally renowned expert in neuroweapons, describes current and near future developments in weaponizable neuroscience and technology, addresses possible contentious and nefarious uses, and discusses ways that such use may be regulated and controlled. He's actually part of the Human Brain Project, Subproject 12. And if you want to follow, I guess, the implementation of ethics and ways they plan to regulate and control put hinges on science. Subproject 12 has issued an opinion and is opinion for the recommendations, and is, I guess, got it into the Biological Weapons Convention, and is internationally backed and have been accepted. And his leadership, he's the task leader for that sub-project, and you could follow him there. I think that would be one of the best ways to keep up with this. There's also, I started a petition on petitiontocongress.com about the Subproject 12 under neuroweapons, and it's also there for easy reference, and anyone that wants to support the petition. It has nothing to do with me. I won't get your data and use it, but it just takes the content and sends a letter to your representatives in Congress and the president. And you can also take that information. It gives a population of it gives a number for the amount of signatures, and you can use that globally. I've done a little bit of research on providing global petitions, and kind of discovered that I haven't had to, for people to be able to take data and use it in any manner to present a case for human rights.
And that's where I really want to go with this conversation, is the human rights aspect. Sorry, Ben Zion, jump in.
Just that the latter two concerns that were mentioned there, lethal consequences or sensations. I think it's fair to say that mostly in present day terms, these are the two consequences of the kinds of prototypes that we're able to look up, or that seem to be more or less verifiable. But all of these concerns are near-term concerns.
I'd like to see Professor James Gennaro join the USTP, to be honest. I mean, if he's a neuroethicist, that's the right party for him. I'd like to see him definitely do something like that. That would be good. Kristen, I mean, finish any thoughts you had, but then explain to the people this scenario about the diplomats. It's something that the people at home can have a look at and have a read about. It's in mainstream news. It's everywhere. It's something that's quite easy to access for them. And it's not a conspiracy. It's on MSNBC. It's on CNN. It's on Fox. What happened with the diplomats? Who's involved? And how does this tie in with neuroweapons?
Well, Catherine Warner and the diplomats were actually on 60 Minutes, and they gave about a 15-minute segment where they allowed the diplomats to come forward and express what happened to them in their words. So that would probably be the best place to start the process of acquiring knowledge. And then to carry things further, the effects that they felt from these weapons are published about quite extensively in the NIH, and they would be categorized under non-thermal effects. So it would be non-thermal effects of EMF would be good keywords to use in a search. And sure enough, you can find thousands of documents in that location of about EMF and other sorts of radiation, acoustic as well. To back up what they're saying, and it's not done in a way that's statistical or theoretical. It will actually give you the frequencies, the power densities, and you can see it's a peer-reviewed experiment.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And how does the neuroweapon stuff relate to transhumanism? Kristen, I'll start with you, and then I'll hand it over to Ben Zion. Kristen, how does it relate to transhumanism in your mind?
Oh, I love transhumanism. Actually, when I was trying to find out how the electronics that generated these types of forces, how it related to the human body, I came across the Hodgkin and Huxley model.
I'll put that on the screen.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep, continue to talk.
Okay, great. So I come across this model that shows basically the circuit elements of like batteries, capacitors, current sources, resistors. Those are elements that are used in computers. And, sure enough, it's a pretty easy search to find. In Google, you would just type in circuit elements or circuit symbols, and you can get a quick overview of the types of symbols that are used in circuits. And well, the founder of transhumanism, I believe it was in like the 1957 article, made transhumanism popular, and it was based upon this model, and it showed how the cells relate to machines. And I really got to say, I've had some education and some experience, and I'm really glad to see that I could probably design myself a body. And I got to thinking, how would this make me immune to biological weapons, and make it so I had like this human right that I've never really heard anyone express before. But I would like to have the human right to control all the forces that my brain processes, every force in my nervous system. And with this cellular model, it shows like the very, very basics of that. Now this is just for one cell, I believe, but you can get it for like chains of cells and neurons, and I guess the whole body can be done. There's software that does models for tissue values. It's called tissue electrical values. So it would basically be a similar model for each type of tissue, and you can model your specific body, and you can affect that model with radiation. So you can actually see, what type of forces are good and bad for that body. It's, it takes a lot of the mystery out of it. It's a different type of, approach of looking at the body, but it's, engineers, like electrical engineers, can say, I might not have to be tied to mainstream medical anymore. I can be whatever I want to be and have this great body and design it for myself, and also have countermeasures to assaults and deterrence. And it's just an interesting way of having hope about what the future might be. It's just it would be fun if this kind of thing would only be used for good and didn't have to be used for military or intelligence along with it. And that's the weakness I have when I consider this model. And it's quite revealing in a weapons sense, but it's just something that at one point I'm hoping for a leader to say, this is how we can make it safe.
Well, yeah, we're getting a leader very, very soon. Ben Zion, how does neuroweapon technology and all this relate to transhumanism as you see it? As I see it, transhumanism is all about ethical advancement. It's all about it's not about building weapons of mass destruction in any context. How do you see transhumanism and this sort of discussion together?
Yes. Well, among the core values and stated goals of the transhumanist organizations is of course living as long as you like, living well and living healthily. And this is something that we work on. We've done so many talks on the subject of anti-aging public health initiatives, and these notions of morphological freedom and the freedom of body and mind to be operating happily and healthily. This is a flip side of that coin. We have to consider that these things might be used in a militarized context, and that in some limited way they already are being used, and they could be used in quite traumatic and widespread fashion. And we need to consider that transhumanists can be the people who speak to this. We can be the people who hold organizations like the Pentagon, hold internationally other intelligence agencies and national entities to keep them to account. It's incredibly important, and it's something that we have to be willing to do. And it starts with talking about the technology and raising literacy.
And this is why it's really good to have you on the show, Kristen, because you're bringing these ideas to the fore, okay? And the thing is, like, the more people that know that the USTP and the transhumanists are advocates of safe, ethical, technology and technological change, I mean, the more resources they're going to get. The more resources they get, the more of an impact they can make. And it is, we're all attempting in our own way to gather up these resources in order to do a shake-up. But there's a tipping point where where this stuff will become commonplace, where we could talk to the United Nations about the human rights aspects, where we could talk to defense contractors about do they really consider the implications of what they're manufacturing? In the case of one of your friends, goaded into building one thing that was going to be used for another. And this is something that comes up over and over and over again. And I really have to bring Victoria Euster-Mankoff back on because she's an expert in microchips. But basically, she says the same thing. All the technology is basically standard. It can be used for good or it can be used for evil. You can use nuclear technology for energy or nuclear weapons. You can use a car like we saw in Nice. I mean, you can use it to transport goods and services, or you can run people over. So the technology is by default standard, and what the whole principle is of the USTP and transhumanism is to guide it and proceed it in an ethical human rights direction that's beneficial for all. Because with AI takeoff, there's plenty of room for miscalculation, just like in the Cold War, there was plenty of room for miscalculation. The gentleman who stopped when the computer malfunctioned and it said that all the nuclear weapons were coming to hit Russia, and the man didn't push the button. That gentleman just passed away, but he's a hero, yep. And that was based on a computer miscalculation. So the USTP this is where they need to go, and it's really good you're coming on and bringing these ideas to the fore, to the front, pushing these things, because it's not just cognitive freedom, which is absolute core value. Cognitive freedom, morphological freedom, and especially the U.S. the Christian Mormon Christians are very big on morphological freedom, and they're an outreach sort of group. But there's the cognitive freedom, but also a whole bunch of other ethical issues across all these other technologies that we talk about all the time, and it's really good. So these weapons are in the non-lethal domain. How do you feel about the term non-lethal, Kristen?
It's just the capacity of torture that's possible, and the fact that whoever is being hit with them has nowhere to go to report the assault, and you aren't capable of surrendering to a machine if that machine is giving you some kind of, shows some kind of interaction with you. And, you just might not be able to leave the house for years or decades. And sure enough, no one likes that approach, to have that happen to them. But also, your family members on the outside, when they look at a situation like that, they want to call the police and say something's wrong, and sure enough, there you are going to psychiatry again, statistically. And I don't know if it's what non-lethal is, but Robert Duncan and I both agree neuroweapons are worse than death.
Yeah, let's talk about this idea of cognitive liberty, a new human right in the age of neuroscience and neurotechnology. What do you have to tell us about that?
If you go to the NIH and look at their documents that they have about cognitive liberty, you'll find several people who want to be represented with the drive to obtain this. And it just appears that the transhuman community could really latch onto this with some of the ideas and proposals they have to ensure this for others. It seems like Neuralink is coming in, I don't know, 5-10 years, maybe even a year, with their test, and then a product on the market that you can buy. And it just seems like, based upon the HH cell model, it's just a handful of equations that an electrical engineer could say, a handful of equations that tell you if the forces that are interacting with your body are enough for you to have cognitive liberty, and for the forces that flow in your nervous system to be ones that come from your body and based upon the design basis of your body or the design basis of a weapon. This could also go for a chemical as well, for of a poison or something of that nature, or a drug. And when that circuit begins to behave in a way that exceeds its design basis, there can be a warning system. And sure enough, the value of something like that to someone like me and thousands, if not tens of thousands of my friends is just tremendous. Just to have the ability to know that our thoughts are ours. And, you look at the diplomats and the pain they were capable of expressing on the 60 Minutes when they found out they were actually deprived of what they thought was a fundamental human right, something that couldn't be taken. The surprise is something that is, seemed very painful for them to communicate, and watching it happen to their kids and their family. There was one family on 60 Minutes when the husband and wife were talking about watching their kids get hit and their kids falling over. And sure enough, they don't want to go to a psychiatrist. They want to have the right to be able to think freely and have a resource at their fingertips that that I really see the transhuman culture being able to provide, just based upon your history. It's been going on for since the 1950s, I believe, was when the model was first revealed. And I just like to present it as a possibility. Electrical engineers are kind of a small subset of society, and there's not many that want to come forward to support human rights that I've seen. There are some that have been able to communicate in movies what this type of non-lethal assault is like and what losing your ability to think is like, but that always gets written off as science fiction. And sure enough, the story's made up, but the the actors are made up, but the capacity for that situation to happen is very real.
Yeah, so Ben Zion, speak on cognitive liberty.
Yes. Well, this is a very real concern, and just saying that these are not these prototypes are non-lethal weapons doesn't really address the larger issue in a very full way. I think because what you mentioned moments ago about this a Soviet officer who staved off a false alarm nuclear attack by this kind of existential risk. It's a double-edged sword with takeoff effects, a rapid increase in the pace of techno progress. Is that we are ratcheted up with other potential existential risks. And now, there's no shortage of such existential risks that derive precisely from this confluence of neuroscience and computer science. And so I feel that any kinds of discussions that we would be having, it's not just about an individual's cognitive liberty. It is about the functioning of a civil society, which we need to be discussing what kind of standards we're going to be having in all of these technological arenas. And
Kristen, there's a petition. Talk about the petition about cognitive liberty. That sounds pretty cool.
Thanks. There's a neuroethicist I follow, Dr. Inca, and he's a co-author of a paper that it talks about cognitive liberty and 3 other human rights that you would just think you have. I mean, never does the thought occur to you that you don't have your own ability to think, your own ability to have psychological continuity, an identity, a self-identity. And he's published in the NIH, and actually the way I caught on to him is I have a Facebook profile, and I have about 2,000 friends, and I shared his effort. One of my friends was going to have a conference about his effort about actually passing this paper as a bill proposal, and seeing if it could pass into law. And I had 230 shares within a couple weeks just about this effort with cognitive liberty. And I was like, this seems to be a way that people want to be represented by. And I did a little bit more research and found how many times it's been in the media, and it seems to be very acceptable. I found it in the NIH, it's international. Dr. Inca is aware that I started the petition, and he thinks it's a little bit premature because he wants to gather more data for a legal case. But I really have no time like an end period or a goal for number of signatures. It was just going to be a way for people to have the ability to say this is something I would like as well, and have their name attached to a letter that made it to Trump, or in Washington, or to any of your state representatives. So yeah, I started it on petitiontocongress.com. Again, it has nothing to do with my name. If you sign the petition, my name doesn't get attached in any way, and your information doesn't make it to me, or at least it hasn't made it to me in a manner I know of yet. And I like to empower people to take action with themselves, and I don't want to collect their data and have them mistrust me in any way. I just have a goal that I would like to see accomplished, and others do as well. And I just thought, based upon the statistics, it was a decent thing to try and see who else cared about these topics, if it was something to pursue.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. And yeah, I really like this. And let's, talking about this, there's other things about the United Nations, other sort of petition type, Congress type initiatives that you're involved with about cognitive liberty and other things. Do you want to speak on that?
Well, I have a couple of programs. I do have a website, but one that I think is honorable mention. I have a girlfriend, Sandra DeRoy. She's an actress, and she's produced a movie, and she's out of London, about what it is like to have your cognitive liberty taken. The movie is Awakening of 12 Strands. It's on YouTube, and it's not exactly the Manchurian Candidate or the Bourne Identity or the Matrix, but it shows what it's like to truly not be able to think. She does have some goals of, I think, revisions to some extent just to make it so people that aren't aware of the capacity of these weapons can watch it and understand, have more of a technical understanding of what's happening. I'm not really too sure what she projects for that, but yeah, if you really want to know what it's like, you know, I do support her effort as well. I would say I have repeated myself a great many times about her movie, just to show people what it's like to really be put into mainstream medical while you're under the impression of one of these weapons. It's she did a really good job.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, that's really good. So what are the countermeasures available to civilians?
We don't have any. You know, it's I look at the transhuman community as a possibility for a countermeasure, just because of the ideas and that they embrace. So you know, it's just hoping a leader would emerge from that community that would say, you know, we understand the human body in a way that we don't deal with statistics, and to the capacity that medical practice uses statistics now, and would be more revealing and hate to use this word, but seemingly honest. You know, you, as a patient at a doctor's office, you don't get upfront data about how much of your treatment is statistic based until you really do research and dig in. And you know, it'd be nice to see a leader emerge that would present that kind of information, you know, at the time of treatment, or have a site that, you know, revealed what their plans were, and just with more exposure than, like, you know, a 15-minute evaluation by a doctor that has a plan to rearrange the structural components of your nerves. It's not that much fun. You know, it's just some things that I want to be free of.
Ben Zion, what do you think about this? Apparently, according to Kristen, there's no countermeasures. I mean, is that something that's important?
Yeah, it's a deeply upsetting prospect, and we want to understand these things well enough and have these things transparency around these developments as they unfold in such a way that they could not be used, and that we would have a full understanding of the prospects of their use. We have security measures built into a lot of technological uses. So I imagine in time we'll find ways to anticipate this. But this is largely, I think, a question of taking these kind of a military-industrial complex and organizations around the world making sure that they are held accountable, not using these things for various state actions.
Yeah, I see it falling into morphological freedom. You know, this cognitive liberty, morphological freedom idea, and you know, yeah, it is disturbing that there are no countermeasures, and it would be good to have at least a discussion in Congress, in the United Nations. You know, it's a human right issue. Actually, Kristen, talk about the human right element of this. You should be entitled to your own thoughts. You should be entitled to how your nervous system works. Talk about the human rights of this. I mean, you know, the United States is a beacon to the world on human rights, isn't it?
Yeah, we would like to think that, and sure enough, I'd like these rights to apply, you know, to everyone in the world. That's the motive for some of the platforms I've taken for the petitions and my friend's movie that I repeat myself about, is to inform people, you know, the value of these rights. And you know, I see, like, I have some friends at TAFFDS who are doing a conference in Africa right now, and it's really nice to see them. You know, I asked them some of the questions that I've asked you upon meeting them a few weeks ago, and about, you know, you want to promote bringing technology to Africa. Everyone knows Africa's doesn't have the infrastructure, medical or utilities infrastructure that other portions of the world have access to. And my main question to them was, are the technologies that you're welcoming into your country, are you prepared for them when they become weaponized? Have you even thought about this? What's your strategy? It would be nice to have representation in all areas when conferences like that are held at research universities, to have representation of someone from an intelligence background say, you're putting yourselves at jeopardy. It's unfortunate that we have to even think this way. Everyone wants faster internet and all the toys and things that come with it, but you can't encourage someone enough to say, you need to bring education and intelligence and awareness to what you're doing, because of the capacity for someone to take advantage of you. And the nice thing about the transhuman community is when you ask these questions to someone, about ethics, they get it right away. I mean, they're so into AI and computers and progress that it doesn't take imagination on their part. And the unfortunate thing about this type of assault is the imagination required to understand the evil and the capacity of the weapon. It's just amazing. It's basically what you see in the movies, and it's really bizarre when it happens to you, based upon the stories of survivors that I mentioned on 60 Minutes from the diplomats. They're just they live in amazement, and it's you spend your entire life after that moment, if you don't think about human rights, looking back saying, did I ruin it for the world? What have I done to not promote a safety system? In the CIA library, they have declassified documents about weapon systems or antennas that view unfriendly antennas or sources of radiation. And it's interesting that the government hasn't chosen to represent that countermeasure system as a system that can also protect biology. So, I mean, based upon the HH cell model, one can see that the radiation or the electromagnetic aspects of these forces relate to the human body. And when our government doesn't come forward and say, we have a global plan to protect biology as well as your computer, it just leaves a lot in question as to how honest they're truly being, and you can't really reveal those things because these topics are so technical. Not everyone has the background to even talk about them. So I would do anything to support human rights, and so would thousands of my friends globally. I have at least one contact in every country that has wanted to be represented or contacted. To some extent, I haven't spoken to every one of them, but about the issue and how they can promote safety.
I'm going to only slightly joke here. Do you have a friend in North Korea?
I would have to look that up.
Yeah.
I'm again reminded, I think I made reference to Eliezer Yudkowsky's Moore's Law of Mad Sciences now in 3 consecutive panels. The idea that with every 18 months, the IQ points required to destroy the world goes down by 1, and that's kind of hard to test. But I think we can all see the internal logic of this as we're talking about things like bioweapons and things relating to cyber warfare, and of course this area as well. We have to really be thinking about how some of this unfolds. And again, transparency is key in these kind of understanding these kind of technologies.
Yeah, there's ideas I can't really say on here because they're kind of too sensitive to leak out. But this is a really important point. This human rights issue. I mean, I personally want to feel like I'm in control of my own thoughts. I want that as a thing. And I would love to know that my government, which is supposed to be looking after me as a constitutionally defined, defend the people. I mean, I would love to know that government would be able to protect me from private scallywags and or foreign entities. That would be great. I mean, and I mean that would be fantastic. And even better on an international level, I would like acknowledgement from bodies such as the United Nations that this is something that needs to be talked about in terms of maybe not the Geneva, but there's a list on the human rights, the Convention of Human Rights. Kristen?
Yeah, that would be great. I know the sub-project 12 from the Human Brain Project, like that I mentioned, has a push to get devices added to the security considerations everywhere. And I can't imagine how they're not. And, it's kind of an interesting question to come up empty-handed on. But I'm looking for a reliable source of information to reveal how that's possible. Saying it nicely?
Yeah, I wouldn't like it. It wouldn't be totally, going with Ben's idea of the mad scientist or, the government's idea. I mean, I wouldn't be totally surprised and shocked to find out that that there has been, misuse, gross misuse of this capacity on people, on civilians. I mean, they do horrible things in warfare, and I'm sure that in a state of war, and we've had plenty of wars that the United States has been involved with. Iraq is an obvious one. Afghanistan is one that just will never go away. You've got secret wars like the war in Yemen, which everybody knows about, but they won't acknowledge. You've got all these wars all over the place. Syria. I mean, once there's a state of war, all options are off the table. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that some of these people have been subject to, America has had to deal with atrocious things such as Abu Ghraib. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that our state may have done something along these lines, even in the realm of testing capacity. Does anybody agree with me?
Yeah. I mean, the fact that these weapons exist and were used in this capacity in Cuba, or presumably a weapon of this kind, an energy weapon or sonic weapon, seems to have been used in Cuba. That we can maybe assume that that's the tip of the iceberg. But there's always tending to be things that are discovered, historical false flags, as we have the lens of history to look at them. It's extremely difficult to predict exactly what that looks like beforehand. But we can assume there's things that we don't know.
So, Kristen, there's an exciting venture coming around the corner, which is Elon Musk. It's Neuralink, and they're creating Neuralace. It's a private thing. Are you excited that this could be a new chapter in liberation, or do you think this is just a false hope?
Well, one would look at the systems that Elon Musk has that could possibly be used for defense, and would like to think maybe there's a quick way to establish countermeasures. But it's pretty scarce to hear a mention of Neuralink with ethics, according to what I've had accessible to me. So I guess as an electrical engineer, I would like the kind of transparency that if this device, was presented to me and I was given a choice to accept it or not, I would like to see the design from the portion that's implanted in my head all the way back to the processing units. And make a decision based upon that. And I've seen a little bit of failure, or at least I have concluded there's been some failure. The CIA has chosen to be represented as having these weapons that can control the mind and perturb the nervous system, and they've been used last century for like drug smuggling to detect those types of operations, and to torture victims with sleep, and at buildings that are designed to carry nuclear fuel. Just in many aspects of national safety, they seem to have a declassified document that associates these weapons with that branch of the government. NASA has done tests with astronauts on these weapons, and I would just look at something like Neuralink and say, okay, the satellite system is there, the transportation off the planet's there. There's obviously an incredible network to establish countermeasures in a quick way for people that don't want to be victims of biological weapons. And yeah, I mean, it's like really interesting and exciting, but will that happen? I don't know. Based upon history and the fact that these have been around for so long, I don't expect any intelligence to be made accessible to me. Just the expectation. I just hopefully I'm wrong, and I can find the government in a declassified document or a publication finding themselves choosing to be represented in a different way. And that's basically what I'm looking for. And truly most of the things I have said today, I do hope have strayed from personal opinion and have taken from a knowledge base that is based upon how our government has chosen to declassify its operations.
Yeah.
Go on, Ben. Yep.
Well, I think of SingularityNet, Singularity.net, and other AI safety approaches. Singularity.net is our friend Dr. Ben Goertzel, a friend of many partner organizations to the USTP, and brilliant man. His approach to transparency and crowdsourcing, in order of this kind of powerful technology. He's not the only person who's doing this. People who have a track record for developing very proprietary systems, when looking at something that has this potential for upsetting the civil order, they say this is something that we need to be very circumspect in rolling out. It's something that we need to have all the eyes on. Not just people in this organization, but everybody. And that's really how we can approach all of these things that relate to existential risk, and this neuroweapon concern is among them.
And sorry, Kristen, go ahead.
No, I just it's really nice to hear, and it's kind of the answers I've been looking for. And prior to going on the show, I just have some questions, and that would be it. We're looking for honest leadership with transparency, and just your last comment, it's a nice way to address that. Thank you.
Well, that's really good. Well, because I was just thinking, it just reconfirms to me the importance of the USTP and transhumanism as a whole, because we try to make light of this. We are, technically a techno-optimist and stuff. I am slightly skeptical sometimes, more than I should be, of these. I have ideas and knowledge bases about what can go on in governments and things like that, and it's not always good. But I'm here supporting this cause because I see this this party and this cause, and maybe the party is a little shifted over a bit, but predominantly this arena as the vehicle to guiding us through. And we're in the 21st century. We can avoid mistakes of the 20th century and the 19th and the 18th. We have the benefit of looking back through history, and we can avoid these through technological progress. But what happens is you need philosophers, ethicists, scientists, everyone sitting around the room and organizing parameters on all of these, from AI to neuroweapons to proliferation of nuclear weapons to high energy beam weapons to to drones, to autonomous drone vehicles, to guns, just the proliferation of guns, biometrics. We can talk about all this stuff, and I find that here is the great place to rally, and all that stands in the way of huge monumental progress in this field, and connecting with all the players we need to connect with, and sitting around on Detonation talking forever is just simply resources, and it's just simply about people coming on and bringing their contacts, bringing their resources, and growing this ethical unit into a machine that can fight, because we're talking about a Pentagon, or we're talking about the government, or we're talking about multi-trillion-dollar enterprises that it's too big for any one person to handle. Lawyers and the whole system. We're talking about a whole system here, and so I'm thankful to you, Kristen, to come on to Detonation and to voice these concerns and bring us back down to reality. I think it's fantastic, and thank you, Ben Zion, for masterfully laying out how transhumanism in the USTP can benefit existential crises such as neuroweapons. Yeah.
Well, we care in the USTP about not just lifespan, but wellspan, health span. And this kind of goes hand in hand. Human well-being and safety is also a thing worth fighting for. And sometimes that means trying to anticipate what's coming down the pipeline and being able to put yourself out there a little bit.
Yeah. Hey, Kristen, anything else you wanted to tell us about? Anything? Go for your life, please.
Well, I was kind of thinking maybe I could reference a friend's site of mine to show you, I guess, the capacity of damage that's been caused by these weapons. It's the tool that I used for networking, and it shows there's like 1,100 people that have claimed that they have been seriously injured by, nearly 1,100. And the site is surveillancesurvivors.org, and it's just their networking tab. And there's the site there that shows the capacity of harm that's been done, and it's really pretty sobering to look at the map and say, could this happen to me? What's the range of this weapon? Or those kind of questions. But yeah, I just wanted to give her credit for the mention that I made earlier, and I wasn't exactly prepared to share the exact link. So there you have it. Thank you.
No problem. I'm just going to bring that up on screen now. That's the logo, Surveillance Survivors, Surveillance Harassment Survivors Alliance. Is that it?
Yeah, it's the networking tab. It's if you go to the left-hand side, it's about the number seventh one. Yeah, down, networking.
All right, let me have a quick look at that. Networking. I found it. Local networking. Okay, so yes, this is the map here. So if you have concerns, you can find a map on this website called Targeted here. There's the map, targeted individuals. They're all over the world. So if you are one of those people, jump on that site and you can be part of the map, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a great data collection service for me. I haven't really used this site for more than the networking, but I'm associated with the founder, and she's just a wonderful person, and several of the people that have registered on the map. And it's pretty scary to report that you're a victim of a crime. You hear, just an example, this is just what I've been taught, and I guess it's true. Just something I've always heard, that typically with someone's in like an abusive relationship, they don't they have problems reporting the crime, so they get trapped in this situation for years. And then you hear someone who hasn't been in an abusive relationship say something along the lines of, what took you so long to report it, just thinking that crime is like something easy to like come out of nowhere and say, hey, this is happening. It really isn't. So what these people have done on this site is really pretty brave, and just quite wonderful. And I use it as a tool to just ask others to think with about their safety, their rights, and where they'd like to see it go, and if the current parties that lead the world have really been a good suit for them.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you both for coming on the show. That was a tough show, but it was a good show, and it's a necessary conversation. And I'm sure that as we go along, we're going to find more people with different technologies and different concerns that are going to be gracing the platform and talking about their own issues and own problems. And that's what the USTP is here for. It's here to ensure that we build these parameters so that you have safe, ethical advancement, as opposed to advancement that can be left to the hands of destructive and evil people. We don't want that. That's bad. So thank you very much for both coming on Dead Nation.
Yeah, and looking at the comments, I noticed that gentleman Telly seems to have made a donation to the organization, and I just want to say thank you to all of the folks who engaged in this discussion. Interesting comments on the side there. And thanks, folks, for taking the time to consider these matters and voice your opinion.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, everyone, for coming on Dead Nation. All more coming to you all this way, all this week.